Hey, what's up everybody? This is Charles. I want to welcome you guys to the conversation. So today I got another great video for you guys. Question is, will the Clippers be a scary as hell defensive team in the playoffs coming up this year? So that's what I want to get into in this video today. So we all know that this season is really all about the duos, and there's so many duos all around the league. With James Harden and Russell Westbrook, we have LeBron and AD. We got Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Unfortunately, those players have been injured, especially Kevin Durant with an Achilles rupture. Then we got Kawhi Leonard, and we got Paul George and others. But these are the main big ones that everybody seems to be talking about in the NBA. And right now, I mean, there's this battle for LA, so to speak. And a lot of people have been making a lot about it, saying, who's going to be the team to come out of the Western Conference? Is it going to be the Lakers and the Clippers meeting up in the Western Conference Finals? So there's been a lot of anticipation, a lot of buzz for that. But what was the story about the Clippers going into the offseason? The big question was, they were one of the front runners to acquire Kawhi Leonard. Them, I believe the Lakers and the Toronto Raptors ultimately. Now, many sources out of Kawhi's camp, none of them really mentioned the Lakers, but people like Stephen A. Smith and others that are close to the NBA insiders said that the Lakers were a real option to being a destination that Kawhi Leonard could ultimately end up in. Nevertheless, he ended up signing with the Clippers. Now, prior to him signing to the Clippers were already a playoff team last season. It was a bunch of role players, but really gritty players that understood their roles, and they're really tough as dogs. And I remember when the Clippers went down to the Golden State Warriors at the time, they asked Doc Rivers, the coach of the Clippers, and they asked him like, what are your thoughts on what just transpired? And he was just like, he was totally inspired by the performance of his players, and he really couldn't have asked for much more out of them, and he was just really blown away by their effort and the performance that they put forward on the court. And you guys remember when Patrick Beverley was going to Kevin Durant and saying, obviously he couldn't guard him. But the fact that he took up that defensive assignment to go at, who many consider the best player in the world, and go at him, who has like, a 1 foot height advantage over the dude, and he was still gritty and went up against the dude. And KD was just like, you got to tip your hat to these guys. These guys are competitors. So that's the DNA that the Clippers had, but they didn't have a star. So when they were able to acquire Kawhi Leonard, in the Kawhi Leonard sweepstakes, that was like, oh my God, we now have the best defensive wing player in all of the NBA. We're adding him to this team of dogs and really, gritty players like Lou Williams, Patrick Beverley, Montrezl Harrell, and others. This is going to be a team for major success, especially on the defensive end. But then they also went out and acquired Paul George, who was considered by many to be probably the top 3 defensive and offensive player in the NBA. And he coming to the team, with comparing him with Kawhi and then having Patrick Beverley as your attack dog spearheading your defense, many people are like, is this going to be an all-time great defensive team? Because they have so many great individual defenders. They have a lot of length. They can switch on pretty much everything. They can play you man up. So whoever you're playing against, whoever you switch onto, that dude can play you man up defense. And if you guys saw when the Clippers played against the Lakers on Christmas Day, Paul George was actually playing defense at times on Anthony Davis. He was playing defense on LeBron James, and LeBron is a bigger player, a heavier player, let's say, because Paul George is 6'8" and about 220 pounds. And LeBron, I think, is about 6'8" or 6'9" and 240 or 50, whatever it is. But he was able to hold his own. So when you have players like this, everyone was salivating at the opportunity to see what this team would be like. And everybody in the media members were really saying, man, this could be an all-time great defense. Even, players within the locker room saying this could be a great team. I heard numerous, quotes from, Clippers players saying that they believe that this team could be an all-time great defensive team. That being said, though, that hasn't necessarily been the case, but I have a larger point that I'm trying to get to. Thus far in the season, if we look at some of the defensive numbers of the Clippers, they currently rank 4th in points per game. They rank 3rd in rebounds per game, 18th in assists, and they have a 29-13 record. We go a little bit deeper into these numbers. If we compare the Clippers with some of the top 5 teams in each statistical category, let's see where they rank. So in points per game, as I said, They're number 4 in the NBA, scoring about 115.8 points. The only teams ahead of them are the Dallas Mavericks, the Houston Rockets, and the Milwaukee Bucks, who score about 119.6 points a game. Rebounds, the Bucks are still leading the way at the first spot. Then you have the Brooklyn Nets, interestingly enough, with 48.6 rebounds a game. But then you have the Clippers at the third spot with 48.3 rebounds a game. Now, if we spend some time focusing on this particular stat, the one thing that will jump out to you is that every great championship defensive team is a really good rebounding team. Now, you may say to yourself, okay, they're averaging 48.3 rebounds a game. The other two teams behind them are the Dallas Mavericks and the Houston Rockets. The funny thing is, though, is that the Lakers, who have plenty more bigs in JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard and Anthony Davis, you would think that actually they would average more rebounds per game. But interestingly enough, though, the Clippers are the number 3 team when it comes to rebounds, of course, and assists. Now, I'm not going to get into assists and all of that. And blocks per game, though, the Lakers are the number 1 team in the NBA with about 7.2 blocks per game. So the Clippers are not there. But as far as a defensive rebounding team, they're doing really well on that end. And their current standing in the Western Conference is a 3 seed with a 29-3 record. So they're doing pretty well, and they've won 7 out of their last 10 games. But the question is, though, will they be able to turn it on in the playoffs? That's really at the heart of what we're trying to get to. Now, what I believe that the Clippers are going to be able to take their defense to another notch when the playoffs comes, and I'm going to give you a number of reasons why. Number 1, the Clippers have this philosophy of load managing their players and being very, very conservative with the health of their players and how they play. Now, granted, they're players that play pretty much every single night, like Montrezl Harrell. He's probably one of those players that won't accept load managing, or maybe he's just one of those guys that's like, I'm a dog, I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna play. If I feel good, if I feel all right, I'm gonna play. But overall, it seems to be their overall team philosophy seems to be managing their players on the way to the playoffs. And Kawhi Leonard was recently quoted, basically communicated to his team that, listen, we have to enjoy the journey. It's going to be a marathon. We're not running a sprint here. So enjoy yourself as you get there. And that seems to be their attitude. That's the attitude of their leader. But I guarantee you, though, when the playoffs do start, they're going to turn up another notch. Now, you may say, what evidence do you have of this? What causes you to say this? First of all, in the playoffs, when teams are going against each other, you don't have back-to-backs, okay? So you have more time to prepare in between games. So things that don't, defensive schemes that you may implement in game 1, some things may work, some things may not work. Then you have some extra days off to now look back and tweak some of the mistakes that you made. And I have the supreme confidence in the Clippers coaching staff to be able to make changes on the fly and be able to make adjustments throughout the playoffs. That's my first reason. And by the way, this is an advantage that all teams have. However, I believe that Doc Rivers and his coaching staff are going to do it pretty much better than everyone else in the playoffs. That's my opinion. Second thing is, we've seen Kawhi Leonard take his performance up to another notch in the playoffs versus the regular season. To put everything in context, last season he averaged about 26.6 points a game, got you about 5 or 6 rebounds, I believe, or 7, and about 3 or 4 assists a game. In the playoffs last season, everything went up. His scoring went up to about 30 points a game. He got you about 10 or 11 rebounds a game, and his overall efficiency even improved. So I believe that Kawhi is pretty much going to follow the same formula that he used last season when this new season begins. Just going, when the playoffs kick off again this coming season, I believe that he's going to do the exact same thing and take his level of play to the next level. I believe that Paul George would have been rested and all of those knick-knack injuries were sort of been dealt with. Remember, last season in the playoffs, his numbers dipped a bit if you look at his regular season production versus his playoff production, and that had to do with the shoulder injury that he sustained, which he had surgery on over the offseason. And that's the reason why he missed training camp and he couldn't train with his team like most other teams who acquired all their players in the offseason. And that has to do with a lot of the reasons why the Clippers don't have chemistry between their two stars, because they didn't have a training camp together and they don't practice much, with Kawhi Leonard, doing some load management, and then Paul George suffering some knick-knack injuries. I think it's an ankle injury that he has now. So by playoff time, I think they'd have ironed out all of these wrinkles. and I think they're going to be ready to go when the playoffs kick off. And I think the Clippers are going to be a well-oiled machine, especially on the defensive end, because remember, in the playoffs, the game slows down. It's no longer a fast-paced game, and teams that can execute in the half court and also very cerebral on defense that understand how to play angles and don't get, flustered, when certain things happen, like giving up a back cut for a layup or something like that and being demoralized and things like that. I think the Clippers are going to be able to gel in the playoffs, especially from the defensive end. But what I want to know from you guys is, do you agree with me? Do you think that the Clippers are going to be a scary team on the defensive end in the playoffs? Or do you think that, too much hype was made about this whole thing? You haven't seen enough to be convinced. There are other teams out there that are better on defense, and you just think that, it's just not going to happen in the playoffs. Whatever you think about it, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. I really want to know what you guys think about this particular topic, especially as the season progresses going into the playoffs. Once again, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to be notified when all of our newest and hottest content comes out. Once again, this is Charles here from DreamersPro, wishing you guys an amazing day. Peace.